How did I go from making $19,676.41 to making over 6 figures per year? What were the 4 key mindset shifts I had to make that allowed this to happen? So I was going through some of our old paperwork, some of our old files, and I came across my 2004 tax return. Now this tax return was significant because this was the first tax return that I filed after my first year becoming a financial advisor. And when I came across this 2004 tax return, man, you talk about flashback city of just remembering where I was in my life at that point, where I was in my career, where I was mentally on thinking and believing how much I could make. Now you have to realize, like, I didn't come from money. I didn't have any family members that were making over 6 figures. I didn't have any friends or their family members that were making over 6 figures. So I just didn't associate with those type of people. So it just was something that I don't know if I ever thought I could accomplish, but it wasn't even like on my radar. Like, I just didn't even think that was a possibility. Now thankfully I became a financial advisor, so that opened my world to new possibilities, new opportunities. But just looking at that tax return, I had to remember, who was that guy back then? Who was that guy, and what key changes did I have to make mentally to get me from making 19,000 to over 6 figures and now over 7 figures. And that's what I want to share with you today. What were those 4 key mindset shifts that I made to push me over 6 figures? I'm going to share those with you right now. So when I think back of where I was, I was 20 years old. I was green as all could be. I had 0 experience other than a retail job. Yes, I had my college degree. I was a finance major. But as far as making money and making over 6 figures per year, as I said, I just didn't even know what that meant. My father, I think the most he ever made in his career was about 40 to 45,000. That's where he topped off at before he eventually retired. My mom, I think she was making about $30,000 or $40,000 a year when she was living on the West Coast. And that's what I was used to. I didn't come from a big house. We had a small house that my dad paid cash for, but the cash was $8,000. Yes, we lived in a house that my dad bought for $8,000. Both of my parents filed for bankruptcy. If you don't know my story, I basically was set up to fail financially, but yet just by the grace of God and just through the right connections, the right network, I ended up becoming a finance major that led to an internship for me becoming a financial advisor. But even that internship didn't guarantee success. Yes, I had an internship at an investment firm, but I just did that to put something on my resume. It wasn't because I had a lifelong dream to become a financial advisor. That didn't happen until later on. And I don't even call it a lifelong dream. It was just kind of I just fell into the right place at the right time. But when I think back of all the things that happened, like wheels in motion, what were the 4 key things that allowed me to push through to making over 6 figures? And when I think back, really it all started even before, we'll say, my career took off. And the first one was just recognizing that the sky is the limit. And what I mean by that is, I wanted to put myself in a position where I had control over my income potential. I wanted to have unlimited upside. And I knew that that had to be in some sort of sales position. Now with sales, what does that mean? Some people are like, oh, I'm not good at sales. I don't like sales. Sales is shady. But the reality is that it doesn't matter what career that you're in or what your job is, you are selling something. And you might disagree with that statement, but the reality is at the very minimum, you're selling yourself. Anytime you go on a job interview, anytime that you go into a meeting, anytime that you're reporting to a boss, you're selling yourself, and you need to be aware of that. So you at least need to have some decent sales skills. So for me, in college, some of my sales experience was I worked in the mall and I sold vitamins and protein powders at GNC. And I loved it. I loved the interaction with people and understanding, what were their pain points, what were their goals, what were they trying to accomplish. And yes, I was a mall job paying me minimum wage, but yet there was just something about that I thrived in. And I knew that I wanted something similar. I just didn't realize what that meant as far as my career. And really just by a chance internship at this investment firm, that it showed me that. Now, if you look at the average salary in the US, you're looking at about $55,000, $56,000. And the same is true for most sales positions. If you take out like all like the mall jobs and all like the lower paying sales positions, sales jobs can pay very well. And the top 10% of all sales positions are paying between $125,000 to $126,000. So you're gonna get compensated and paid well if you're good at selling. So that's why with me, knowing that I had to be in some sort of sales, and for me, that, like I said, the internship led to me being a financial advisor, and yes, I was selling something, but even more so, I was selling myself. I was selling myself to people to trust me, to work with me as their financial advisor. And that took a lot of training, it took a lot of experience, it took a lot of asking questions to the right people, to the other advisors in my office, talking to other people that had more experience than me. It took reading books and just understanding what it took to earn somebody's trust. All that to say is that if you are trying to push through to making over 6 figures, you have to put yourself in a position where you are in charge of how much you make. Are you subject to the standard 3% raise, 5% raise? If that's the case, it's gonna take you so much longer to make over 6 figures. You have to put yourself in a position that you can make more, that you can advance so much more faster. And we're not talking about being an entrepreneur or starting your business, just as a career, something in sales that allows you to be in charge of your destiny, how much you make. To me, that's where you have to look at. That's where you have to be. You have to put yourself in a position that you can make more and increase how much you're going to make and increase that income. The second thing I had to do was I had to bet on myself. I had to believe that I was going to succeed. That's so easier said than done. Especially like if you know more about my background, like I didn't really have, up until college, I was kind of seen as being kind of flaky, not really knowing what I want to do with my life, just kind of like changing my mind and just doing new things. And I don't think a lot of people believed that I was going to be successful. And really, I didn't really give them a reason to believe that. Like there was nothing about my past that showed people that, okay, yeah, Jeff's got it figured out. Like he's going to make a lot of money, he's gonna be very successful. But when it came to me becoming a financial advisor, something changed, something shifted. And I knew that I had to believe in myself. I knew that I had to bet on myself. And I tried to remember, like, what was it that made me just so determined, like, to not fail, to not even believe that failing was an option. And I know part of it was, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, because I do feel like that there were some family members, that just didn't think that I was gonna amount to anything. And I just felt like, you know what? If that's what you think, I'm gonna show you something different. But I do remember one thing specifically. So when I started my career as a financial advisor, I was hired by one of the other advisors in the office, not hired by the branch manager specifically, even though she had to make the ultimate decision. But this branch manager did not believe that I was going to make it. Didn't believe that I had the experience, that I had the knowledge, that I had the grit to push through. And how did I know this? Well, I knew this because when I first started, I wasn't even given a desk. They didn't even give me a desk or an office to sit in. I just had like a cubicle, which might not seem like a big deal, but when you're a financial advisor, like you're meeting with people about their money and their finances. And if you don't have an office to meet with people, like that looks pretty shady, especially when every other advisor in the office has their own office, right? But me, I didn't at first. But I will say that the advisor that hired me, he was one of the top producers. He, put his neck on the line. He stood up for me, so I ended up getting my office. But I just remember that in the beginning, wow, so you don't think I'm gonna make it. You don't think that I have what it takes to survive in this field. For me, that was like, all right, once again, you don't believe in me, I gotta believe in myself, so that's what I'm going to do. And I didn't, I didn't quit, I didn't fail, I just kept pushing through because I knew that I had I knew that I had what it took, and that's what I did. You know, I pushed through because I knew that I was in charge of my destiny. I knew that if I was going to make it, that I had to give everything that I had. I had to bet on myself. So I think that beautifully ties into the third thing. The third mindset shift I had to make was I had to remove those limited beliefs. The whole term limited beliefs, like that whole phrase, like I didn't know what that meant back then. And it wasn't until being mentored later on in my life by Michael Hyatt, New York Times bestselling author, but in his book, Best Year Ever, you know, he talks about limited beliefs and how limited beliefs are these short-term thinkings of where we are currently and how that affects our future. Like, what are the things that we believe about ourselves right now that can have a dramatic impact on our outcomes later on in life? And I think about back then and all the limited beliefs that I could have allowed myself to believe to just derail me from achieving any sort of success. So what were some of those limited beliefs? I want to share these with you because chances are you have some of these in your own life, in your own journey on achieving financial success. But for me, becoming a financial advisor, like I said, I was in my early 20s. I am too young to do this. I did not graduate from a good enough school for me to achieve success. My GPA, which was like 3.2, I think, wasn't high enough, you know, for me to succeed in this industry. My parents didn't have any money and I didn't have any connections, so how was I gonna get new clients? I mean, the list goes on, and I'm not smart enough to do this, to win clients' trust. I'm not smart enough to understand investment solutions or financial planning scenarios. Like, I'm not qualified to do this. The list could go on, but I didn't allow that to infect that I could do this. I started telling myself, you can succeed, you can do this, you are smart enough. It doesn't matter that you went to a state school, it doesn't matter that your GPA is only a 3.2. You have what it takes because you're willing to do the work. And ultimately, like, that's all that matters, that you are willing to do the work. If you're willing to do the work and not quit on yourself, you can achieve success. Maybe it's not in where you are currently at. Maybe you have to go through some sort of change to get there. But as long as you don't quit on yourself, you can achieve that success that you want, that you desire, as long as you're willing to persevere. So ultimately, I had to ask that question, like, why not me? Why do I not have what it takes to succeed? I'm not the only financial advisor in the world that didn't graduate from a state school, that, you know, didn't graduate from a Ivy League school, or didn't have a 4.0 GPA, you know, or didn't have the connections they need, you know, with their parents or their family that had gobs of money. Like, why not me? Why can't I do this? And really, like, when I just kind of went through that mental exercise of asking myself, why not me? It's like, yeah, why not? Why can't I do this? I mean, I do have what it takes because I'm willing to put in the work, and that's what I did. And one of the ways that I did that for me was, okay, maybe I don't have the experience, maybe I don't have those connections, but what I can do is I can become the expert in my space. So I didn't know a lot about all the different investment options, but I did the research so that I could learn, so that I could understand how portfolios work. I could understand what an ETF was and what mutual funds were, and how to dissect a portfolio, and how to uncover all the hidden fees and expenses inside portfolios, and how standard deviation worked, and all that fun stuff. I put in the time to become the expert because I might have been young, I might have not had the experience, but I was willing to do the research and put in the work so that I did have that experience, so I did have that knowledge. And I also asked a ton of questions to all the advisors in the office because I wanted to learn from their experiences. And because I was willing to put in the work and just allow myself and submitted myself to learn to become the expert, ultimately that allowed me to push through and achieve the amount of success that I did. All right, so the fourth mindset shift I had to make, and I think this is by far probably the biggest one, was never get comfortable. And there was just something about, it didn't matter what I did, no matter how big or how small the success or win that I accomplished, I never allowed myself to get comfortable. Now early on, like, this was me cold calling. So I was cold calling 200, 300 dials a day. And just because I got somebody to agree to meet with me or agree to receive my business card, just because like I had like a good call, that didn't mean that I quit for the day. I kept calling after that because I wanted more. And the reality, like early on in your career, like I needed more because I wasn't making any money. So I had to get more clients. So I never got comfortable. Just because I did a seminar and I landed some big clients and we brought in, you know, some good size accounts, I already had another seminar scheduled, you know, over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and I kept doing that. Didn't matter how successful that I was in that moment, I never allowed myself to get comfortable. And that continued into me becoming a certified financial planner. Now this is a designation that you don't have to get as a financial advisor. But once again, recognizing that I was still younger than most other financial advisors. I was still lacking experience, even though I'd been in the business for that point about 5 years. I wanted to set myself up different from other advisors, so I sought out to become a certified financial planner. And even though this designation didn't give me an immediate raise or immediate pay raise, I knew that having those credentials would show others, show potential new clients, that I was serious about my industry and my craft, because I wanted to become even more the expert in my space. I never got comfortable. I kept educating myself. I kept learning. I kept pushing the boundaries so that I could keep growing. Now, one of the quotes that I love, and I don't know if this is an exact quote, but just like a mantra that I live by, but I've always felt if you get comfortable, if you stop growing, you're dying. So even to this day, I'm always challenging myself. I'm always pushing myself, because there's always going to be competition out there that is going to be smarter than you. They're going to have more tools. They're going to have more connections. So if you're not growing, if you're not learning, if you're not challenging yourself, you're going to be lost. You're going to be passed over. You're going to be forgotten. You're going to be yesterday's news. And I see so many, not just in my profession, in my career, but you see these people, men and women, that they get so far in their career and they just hit on cruise control and they just drift and they just kind of maintain. And yeah, they're making really, really good money, but the quality of life is just not quite there. The challenge that they used to have early on in their career, that fire isn't there. They just kind of wake up, go do their thing, collect their paycheck, and they move on. And to me, like, that's not living, like that's not growing. So challenging yourself. And I continue that to me starting my own wealth management firm, my own registered investment advisory firm, Alliance Wealth Management. That was a huge challenge for me. It was me launching my blog and understanding online marketing and how to market yourself online, which was so different than the cold calling and the seminars that I did early on in my career. And here I am now doing more YouTube videos. I have a podcast, and they're just different things that I keep challenging myself, that I want to learn and become the expert in those spaces as well, because that's what gives me life. So if you're trying to achieve that coveted level of 6 figures or more, I mean, these are the things that you have to do. You can't get comfortable where you're at. You can't just get somewhere and just cruise and drift. You're not going to grow. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen the way that you want to. You got to keep pushing yourself. You got to keep challenging yourself and figure out what it is, what's that next thing that you need to accomplish. Now, the one thing that I will say I'm very guilty of, and this is the whole thing of not getting comfortable and challenging myself, but you can get to the point where you don't celebrate your wins, meaning that, like, all right, I got a brand new client, or I got this pay raise, and then like you're just moving on to the next thing. You do have to take a step back and appreciate what you have accomplished. So there are times, you know, throughout my year or throughout my quarter that I'll look back and think of, like, what were those big wins over the last quarter, over the last year, or the last 3 years, 5 years. And I celebrate those wins, because if we forget about those wins, then all of a sudden, like, everything that we're trying to accomplish is just so much pressure. Like, so in one breath, yes, I'm saying don't get comfortable, You know, don't rest on your laurels, but in the same breath, you have to make sure that you take time to celebrate all the successes that you have achieved. Otherwise, it's all for nothing. But yeah, that is by far, like, those were the 4 key mindset shifts that I made that allowed me to push through. And some of the cool things, I'm actually gonna do another video where I talk about what were the key mindset shifts that I had to make going from 6 figures to 7 figures. So stay tuned for that video. But some of these apply, like some of the things I'm sharing with you right now apply for me going from 6 to 7 figures. Now there are a few changes which I'm looking forward to sharing with you, but a lot of the same things apply. So if you can get these 4 down, this will set you up. This will build that foundation that you need to achieve that 6-figure success that you're looking for. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that I've given you some practical tips, something to think about, maybe some of the things you need to change in your mindset to help you to achieve that 6-figure level that you want. This is Jeff Rose reminding you that it's your money, it's your life, and only you can make it awesome. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that, like it, share it, all that fun stuff. Can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, peace.